Everybody, welcome to the Hub, podcast about daily economics and politics. Today's guest is Felicia Finnie. Felicia, I actually met her, my wife and I met her this past summer in Texas when I was interning for Toyota. Her and her husband were there. Brandon was working for Goldman, right? That's correct? Yep.
Yeah.
So Felicia is originally from Singapore. We're taking a break from our 4-part series episode of interviewing political, candidate supporters. And today we're going to be talking about immigration, a foreigner's view of America and the election and Donald Trump. I thought it'd be interesting to kind of get that outside perspective of the United States. So, Felicia, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on the podcast. So maybe let's just start off a little bit about your background. So, you're originally from Singapore. When did you come to the U.S.? Maybe give us a little 5-minute version of your story.
Yeah. So, like Matt said, I was originally from Singapore, born and raised there. So did all my school there until I was 19. I, met missionaries and joined the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I feel like that opened up my sphere of influence to the US. And I learned about Brigham Young universities in Hawaii and Utah. And I had applied there. Before that, I didn't know anything about, US colleges or anything. And so then I was accepted to BYU Hawaii, went to school there when I was 22 years old. And so that was like my first ever experience, I feel like, in the US. I know it's not the mainland, but, kind of close.
Hawaii is pretty sweet.
Yeah. And that was fun. And then I went on a church mission to Utah. And I feel like that was the real deal, opening me up to the US and getting to know more about it here. And then went back to BYU Hawaii after my mission, met my husband, and I have 2 kids now.
Yeah, Clea is one of our favorite children, and we know she's awesome. Thank you for that. I guess a little bit about so when you were in Singapore growing up, did you never what was your impression of the U.S. then? And then so you never thought of going to school, going to university in the U.S. You were happy staying in Singapore?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and it's crazy just thinking, being from Singapore, I just thought that my whole life I would be there. Never thought that I would leave for school, even in the US. Maybe Australia, because a lot of Singaporeans go to Australia for their undergrad degree.
Mm-hmm.
But that was about it. I never thought of the US until I feel like the church has, opened me up to that.
Yeah.
But growing up, I would watch TV, and we have all these channels like HBO and stuff, and watch movies about the US. And I grew up knowing 3 cities in the US: LA, Las Vegas, and New York City. And that's all. And so every time you see the scenes, the infrastructure, I'll be like, oh, I know where this is.
Yeah.
And really, that's about it. But my impression of US then was a lot of sex, drugs, celebrities. It was it was everything I saw on TV.
What you consumed in the media. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So when you went to Utah for your LDS mission, that was probably a little different than, so you live in LA right now, right?
Yeah.
Outskirts of LA. But yeah, Utah is probably quite a bit different. I mean, Hawaii is a very special place, very awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And but Utah is very different than all those places you mentioned. What was kind of your, how did you feel when you got to Utah? How was the, how was it?
My first impression was, wow, this is huge. This place is big. Okay, just to give you an idea, from Singapore is a tiny dot on the map. And so from one end to the other, if you drive, it's just an hour max. That's it, right? And then I come to the US where your freeways are 4 or 5 lanes, and
Yeah.
it's just different. And Walmarts and everything, all the grocery stores, they're humongous. just everything. It was a little culture shock for sure. Um, and my English, like hearing Americans speak, I have always, when I watch TV, I'll turn on subtitles.
Hmm.
And so then that was a little hard part, even though English is my first language, I had to, listen more carefully to what people were saying. But other than that, I just feel like there's so much goodness on this land. Like people were so nice. Maybe I was on my mission, right? So it was church related and
Yeah.
I was around people. So it wasn't really like, I don't know, it's hard to say at that point. But yeah, I loved serving my mission. I just saw so much good, like on top of what I saw on TV.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it's interesting. A lot of people say like, America's, fundamentally racist, or, make these claims against, like, they hold down African Americans, or whatever the case might be. And I mean, there has been cases and, Jim Crow laws and things like that that have been a black eye on America for sure. But I also look and I see like, the most people still want to come to America. They want to immigrate here. They want to like start they want to end up here. There's opportunities here. And if it really was as bad as, sometimes people claim, I don't think you'd have people moving here like they do, and I think it doesn't mean that there's not more work to be done to like make sure people feel welcome, people have opportunity, but I think I still think it's a pretty good spot, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
There's so much potential here. I feel like,
Yeah.
like lots of entrepreneurs. I feel like people, there's so much growth. Yeah. Even though it's already like, I feel like America is so developed and everything feels like it's good, but I can see why people want to come here for sure.
Yeah. No. So I guess maybe talk a little bit about Singapore. What's so it's a city state basically is what I would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And the founder Lee Kuan Yew, he basically carved out Singapore from Malaysia like by himself is kind of what I was reading up on, and he's had a huge impact on the city. Singapore is kind of like this island and all this other Southeast Asia, like it's really developed, very well educated. So what is kind of, and if you don't know this, that's okay, but like what's kind of Singapore's kind of relation to like the US? Are there a lot of US visitors? When you were growing up there, was the US kind of viewed as like I guess like what was the US view? What was Singapore's view of the US like from like a geopolitical stance?
Mm-hmm. I um I feel like of all my friends, right? Can I even say this? Like they don't.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, this is yeah.
Yeah, sure. I feel like 90% don't like Trump, and I feel like especially with coronavirus around and how he, you know, just say like blatantly say, oh, it's the Chinese virus. Just like words he used as a precedent has made a lot of people upset and angry.
Yeah.
And just like, yeah, he's been saying so many dumb things about like, yeah. And my father though, he's probably like the number one hater of Trump, and tells me every day when I talk to him on FaceTime, like, you guys should move back home. Like, you can't live there. And, I feel bad because I like it here. And even though I really want Kalia and Kai to go to school in Singapore at some point, um, I he is very strong opinionated, and I get that every single day from him. Like because my background's Chinese, my ancestors are from China, and I feel like with this Corona thing, it has like riled up so many people's like hearts. I don't know how to better explain it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely been interesting. Like I remember when coronavirus like first, I guess when it first started becoming a big thing in the US, like, I was watching it and, I was, Wuhan when it was shut down in January and February and things like that. but I have a friend who's from Hong Kong,
Mm-hmm.
and he's studying here in the US as well. And he got a lot of masks, and he was sending them to his family in Hong Kong because there was a shortage of masks, but he also had some here in Utah, and he was handing them out. And, so I started doing my own research, and what I found was like, Hong Kong has had experience with viruses wherever they originate. Most of the time, it's just China because China's growing, and it's just kind of coming into contact with like, viruses as they keep expanding into forests and things like that. Uh, it's not like China's malevolently trying to release viruses on the world. It's
Right.
just part of them. They're the people growing. But with SARS, Hong Kong really learned to not trust China, not trust what they were saying, what the official government. As soon as they heard a whiff of a virus, they masked up, and
Yeah.
they totally went extra careful on cleanliness. And so that was kind of my approach. I talked to my friend Kyle, and he was kind of like, yeah, no, we wear masks. This is how we wear it. Like, he's like, but besides that, you can still go out and do your thing.
Yeah.
And then, but more and more as I've started thinking, I've realized Hong Kong and the U.S. are a little bit different because, like, Hong Kong, you're pretty concentrated, right? Lots of people, kind
Yes.
of like Singapore,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
lots of people together. Or in the U.S., and what you found, right, is like the U.S. is pretty spread out. The grocery stores you mentioned, like, they're massive compared
Right.
to Singapore and Hong Kong. And so kind of my view has been, yeah, it's good to wear a mask. I don't think we need to wear them as like strictly as if you were in Hong Kong or Singapore, where it's like you're really
No
clustered together.
contact. Yeah.
Yeah. But when we are like clustered together, when we're indoors and it's kind of cramped, like automatically I'm like, okay, like let's put on a mask.
Right.
But I think that, this hasn't been, we didn't have that experience of SARS. And so like this is like America's first time going through it.
Yeah.
And I think Trump's communication to the American people, the way he's handled it, has been pretty poor, honestly. And as you said, like rhetoric matters. Like what he says matters a lot. Because like you haven't really felt. Correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but like in California, you feel like Trump hasn't, like, you've enjoyed being in California, and like it's not like Trump's ruining your life.
No. No. Yeah. No.
But your dad on the other side in Singapore,
All
all
the way
he,
in Singapore.
all the way in Singapore, he's hearing what Trump is saying, and he's like, "Man, you got to get out of the U.S. It's terrible."
Yeah.
But really, all it is Trump talking, and it's like it's unfortunate because like that's something he could change. That's something he could change his dialogue. He could change the way he
Mhm.
talks, what he says, and I think a lot of people like their day-to-day life isn't really affected by Trump, but like the perception he gives to everyone else could change quite a bit. But is that fair to say? Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I also feel like my dad's media, like what is he watching, right? If
yeah,
he's watching like all these news from China, which he is, I feel like they like to cook up stories too,
totally.
and blow things up out of proportion. And so, yeah, sometimes he'll say things, and then we're like, no, this is not what it's portrayed here. And he's like, oh, that's why you need to be careful. They're not like feeding you right information. And you're like, who's not getting the right? Like, it's crazy. It's wild. Yeah. But that's a good point you made there that like my life's not ruined, because of this.
Right.
And yeah, I don't think there's a need for my dad to be so angry at all, like for sure.
That is interesting. I didn't realize your dad following Chinese news. I mean, it makes sense. He's
Mm-hmm.
Chinese, and yeah, I mean, both sides, right? China
Mm-hmm.
and the U.S. That will be the great geopolitical conflict of our time, I think, because China's growing. It'll be yeah, there'll be something we'll have to continue to manage and work with, and sometimes work against. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's an interesting relationship. So. Um, So I guess kind of closing here, what's kind of your thoughts on, uh, you know, we're in the election cycle here. Joe Biden's been as the nominee for the Democrats. Donald Trump, obviously, the incumbent for the Republicans. It's okay if you're not like into like politics a lot, but like, what's kind of, I guess, your view of both parties and how, and maybe you could inform us a little bit about Singapore. Like, how do elections work there? Like, are they very different than the U.S.? Uh, maybe talk a little bit about like Singapore's elections and then what you see in the U.S. with this current election season.
Yeah. So I I literally have no thoughts about this election process at all. Maybe because number one, my husband's Canadian and I'm Singaporean and we're both not citizens, so we don't get to vote. And I feel like every time if I go on social media or when people talk about politics, they are both like they're just very passionate people, right? Who talk about that. You are really nice about it, but other than you,
I
like
don't want
things
to. I
get
don't want to
riled,
drive all my guests away. So,
yeah, people get riled up, and it's always contentious, you know.
yeah,
And I just like to distance myself from contention.
totally.
And so whenever that happens, I just like almost like put up a wall and not get into it. And but it's cool. Like I know there are two parties, right? And I even had to read up what the parties what they stand for, you know, and which is cool because I learned a lot, like you know, abortion, same-sex marriage, and different things. I
Yeah,
hear about them, but I didn't know really which party stand for what, and so it was cool to read that up myself. And if so, I don't really know about the different people themselves. I know about the things they've said, the things that they've done in the past that has brought up in media. But other than that, I feel like I am more Republican.
yeah,
Yeah. And in Singapore, I feel like elections is so peaceful, right? I I left Singapore when I was like early 20, so I feel like I've never gotten to vote there at all.
uh-huh.
Um, but it's not like yeah, it's not like I'm driving down LA and seeing like protesters or like people like getting signs and stuff. It's never like that. And I feel like in Singapore, when there's a rally, they would go around in like trucks and have like a loudspeaker phone and you know just talk. It's it's not what I experience here at all. It's so different, completely different.
Yeah, I wonder if part of it has to do with like relative size, right? The U.S. massive country, Singapore city state. Uh, yeah, I wonder if that's that has anything to do with it, but yeah, it's definitely the U.S. elections is its own special breed for sure.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's cool to see how different and like you say because it's bigger. I feel like everything is um put into like a magnifying glass. You know, it's like boom.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, and I guess one thing that's kind of cool about uh, obviously I'm American, so I'm going to be pro-American. Drink from the Kool-Aid a little bit. I get that. I apologize to my readers for that, but like, I think that's one of the wisdom of like the way our government was set up, the Constitution, separation of powers, federalism, your national government, and then you have all the state governments as well, and then local governments. Like the state of California is pretty powerful, like just the state itself. It's like the fifth largest economy, just by itself. Um, it's a pretty, powerful state. And I guess what's cool about that is like, you know, if you don't like the way people are living in like Alabama or somewhere else, like you can go to another state and it's very different culture. And like, it's kind of like, you can have these states that have kind of different policies and it's, and it's, kind of, yeah, it's kind of a good thing. Now it's also, can be a downside and sometimes you need a national, you know, law or something like nationally. But day to day, like government doesn't really impact your day to day life, right? You
Hmm.
might not like Trump, but it's not like he's impacting your day to day life, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree. I feel like living here, like living in Utah, living here, living in Dallas, Hawaii, they're all so different.
yeah,
But it has all been like different good experiences, you know? And it almost feels like, you know, I always talk about how I miss home, and then I have like my sister-in-law whose family is in Georgia, and her flight home is so long, you know, it because America's so big, right?
yeah,
And so they always, and people mention like, what am I complaining about missing my family when they're just like, you know, we're still in the same country? But I get that because you guys are far away too. Some people are really far away from, you know, like your East Coast to West Coast is, it's how you see it, right? Even though it's one country, but it's totally different states. And yeah,
yeah.
so
It's massive. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely bigger than Singapore, that's for sure. Well, and this also goes to say though is like, and I think this is kind of one of the issues and one of the points that I'm starting to realize more and more is like, if Donald Trump just changed the way he communicated, talked, and like maybe deleted his Twitter account, I think a lot of like, a lot of like criticism for Donald Trump would kind of disappear, right? Like, I mean, most people's criticism of it is like, well, this is what he says. I'm like, I don't like what he says, or like, and and that's fair. Like, he's definitely, as my guest last week said, like, we're not, we don't teach our children to like emulate Donald Trump, but he's the leader of the U.S. right now, and so like that doesn't really send a good signal. So, yeah. I guess in kind of the last things, I guess, is there anything else? What do you think? Last question for you, promise. Uh, what do you think the U.S. could do better, and what do you think it's doing well?
hmm, I what can it do better? What can be done better? I think of like the government sectors. I feel like every time I have to contact somebody from the government, like um, say like calling for my tax return or like the DMV, I feel like it's like impossible to get a hold of anybody. It's terrible. Um, yeah, it's just difficult, you know. And, you know, my sister was visiting a few months ago and she came from Singapore to the US in January.
Uh-huh.
And she had a connecting flight in San Francisco. And, you know, when you come in San Francisco, it's your first stop in the US. And so she has to cross customs,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it was crazy because even though there were so many counters, there were a lot of people coming in and things were really slow, and she had a connecting flight soon to come to LA. And so she went up and told them, hey, my connecting flight is soon. Can I maybe cut the line and, you know, just come across first, you know?
Yeah.
Which if in Singapore, they would do anything to help you get on the plane if you had a plane waiting for you.
Right.
But she missed her flight. They were like, sorry, we can't do anything. Didn't help her at all. And she had to stay the night in the airport in San Francisco, and that broke my heart to know that she just felt like she was treated so poorly,
Yeah.
which would have never happened in Singapore. And I know, again, this is just one case, right? Um, but yeah, I just feel like in Singapore, other places that I've visited, they treat you like the customers, but then here, they treat you like you're like a beggar, you know? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what I feel like a lot of the times.
Yeah. That is, yeah. Civil service, government run agencies, they're it's a common complaint, even amongst people
You
born
guys,
and raised in the U.S. The
yeah.
DMV is, yeah, and it's too bad that like I wonder. That's another topic, like figuring out how to make government work better and bureaucracy
Mhm.
be a bit more efficient and treat people better too. Like that's a terrible experience for your sister. Like I've been in airports and sleeping in one is not fun.
No, yeah. But I do want to say though, I really feel like like the US is really the land of the free. You know, I feel like people, they're not afraid to voice their voice. You know, the First Amendment, freedom of speech, It is so, like, it's just here. I can see it every day, you know, and I feel like there's so many entrepreneurs just being in Utah. Um, there's so many startup companies that I love, to see how people, you know, when they have an idea, they'll bring it to work. I don't know if you all watch Shark Tank.
Yeah.
It's one of me and my husband's favorite show. To see like everyone's always, when they have an idea, they're not afraid to, you know, go get it done and try for it. I feel like maybe in Singapore, where it's so small, people are more hesitant to try out stuff like that. We're more like closed off, but I feel like here everyone's like, you know, I have this goal, I have this dream, and I'm gonna achieve it, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that about this place. I feel like it's different.
Yeah. It's definitely, yeah, definitely freedom to take risk and, you know, maybe start up a podcast and, you know, interview your
I
friends,
know.
that kind of thing. So, Felicia, thanks for your time. Thank you for sharing your
Thank
thoughts.
you.
You are awesome. Yeah, thanks for being on the podcast. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
we'll see you.
see you. Bye.
Bye.